We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
This first one's from Nick. So while Nick is still planning his dedicated theater room, he is presently enjoying his Pioneer Kuro and his 4.1 speaker setup. He'd like to upgrade to an HDR projector and a 7.2.4 Atmos setup. Both will be a significant cost, but he's leaning towards filling out his audio system first, since HDR projectors still seem to be a somewhat early stage, while audio seems to be a little bit more settled. Would we agree with that assessment? I would agree with that assessment. Okay, and this is why. I think, well, obviously, based on what we talked about last week, there are now HDR projectors which are kind of reasonably priced.
Yeah, $2,000 for that new Optima, which quite a few people tweeted at me about. So people are excited about hitting that price point, I think.
Yeah. And I am, you could definitely get into HDR right now and get something good that you could live with for a long time. I believe that you're at that, we're early enough stages that the price drops are going to come fast and furious over the next 6 to 12 months, maybe even 18 months. We're going to see some real differences. But as far as Atmos and all that stuff goes, yeah, I think you're good to go. And you could do that now, and it's not going to change significantly, I hope, between now and the time that you get around to buying this projector.
Well, I mean, the speakers and the subwoofers, very safe.
Oh,
purchases, So, I mean, the only thing that is a possible question mark at all is the AV receiver doing all the processing. And that's because of HDMI 2.1 or whatever this might come out. Which actually is going to be asking about later. But yeah, I mean, if you get the 11 speakers and the 2 subwoofers, and maybe you're thinking you even want an amplifier, because, most of the AV receivers that do 11 speakers have 9 amps built in, so you're going to need at least a 2-channel amp. Maybe you decide, hey, I'll get a 3 or a 5-channel amp or something like that to, take a little bit more load off of the AV receiver. So, your amp, your speakers, your subs, all very safe purchases. So, yeah.
Right. I think audio is the way to go right now. So he says he gets most of his content from Netflix, both their streaming service and Blu-ray discs by mail. Other than Game of Thrones on Blu-ray, he has yet to notice Atmos audio being offered. Does Netflix support Atmos, either streaming or on the physical discs they rent out? Streaming, as far as I could tell, they don't. Not yet.
I haven't seen Atmos on Netflix streaming yet. No.
Yeah, they do support HDR. I mean, that you will see the HDR out there,
even some in Dolby Vision.
I have read that when asked, Dolby, I want to say Dolby said when they asked whether or not Atmos is going to be on Netflix, they said not yet or something like that.
Well, because Netflix is already using Dolby Digital Plus. And Dolby Digital Plus can have the Atmos extensions built into it. So it seems like the technology is mostly there and ready, but
the question is whether or not the demand is going to be there. And I think that's what it really comes down to, in my estimation, is whether or not there's going to be enough demand for Netflix to go through the trouble of putting it on there. Vudu has it.
Yes.
Vudu has it.
Although on, a very limited number of titles.
Yes.
You have to search for it. Yeah.
But I believe if you're going to see it, the first place you're going to see it is you're going to see it on. Actually, I don't know. I would like to say the first place you're going to see it is on their own Netflix original stuff, like the Daredevil and all that. But it might not even be there because that's extra money. Then they put as little money as possible into their content creation. I mean,
well, they're billions of dollars in debt from spending lots of money on original content, but
still, it doesn't. Yeah. It's not. They're not exactly breaking the bank.
I could certainly see, I mean, Warner Brothers is almost always the first studio to support new formats and that.
Yeah.
So they have plenty of movies that already have Atmos mixes. I could see them maybe
seems like it should be something they could do. But,
Netflix with a
we'll see.
Updated version. Yeah.
It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna come anytime soon. I have to be honest with you, and it may never come. And it's only because they're going to have to spend money to do it, and they're not going to spend the money unless they think they're going to get some return on it. And I don't.
Well, hey, I mean, Xbox. If you're going to their actual, movie store on the Xbox, they have some titles now with Atmos. So if they make way more money than all the other releases, yeah, sure they will, because there's so many people with Atmos setups. Yeah. But as for the physical discs by mail, I mean, the question really is, because there aren't that many Blu-rays with Atmos on them, so the question is whether you're renting movies that even have a Blu-ray Atmos release to begin with. Then if you are, Netflix does sometimes get the rental-only versions of discs from the studios with the 28-day delay after the retail versions. So they're not just going out to stores and buying the full retail versions. They are sometimes getting the rental-only versions. So even out of the Blu-ray discs that do have an Atmos soundtrack on the one you can buy in a store, sometimes the rental-only version doesn't, and that's the one Netflix gets. So, even there, your chances are not fantastic.
And there's people who have, I have reported, and you can find these lists like on AVS and other places. They've reported on which discs they have gotten. Like somebody said, I got John Wick, didn't show up. I got this Gravity, didn't have Atmos. I got this one, did. You know? I don't remember which one that did. But so they do have some physical discs that they rent out. It's just a matter of getting them. I don't know if you're going to or not. So he asks, how common is Atmos on Blu-ray discs? Is it mostly just on Ultra HD Blu-rays, or is it also on regular Blu-rays? And of course, it is on regular Blu-rays.
It is?
I own some.
But there are quite a few movies now where the Ultra HD Blu-ray version of the movie has Atmos and the regular Blu-ray version doesn't.
Right.
There are several that are that case. So what you want to do, go over to nextgenhometheater.com, because he keeps a fantastic list up to date. This is for North America. But for the North American releases, he has all the discs that have Atmos, all the discs that have DTS-X, and now he's got a separate Dolby Vision section and a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray section. So he's keeping right on top of all the releases that are coming out. So that's the way to check. And again, it would be good if you could make sure that the disc you're getting from Netflix is a movie that for sure has an Atmos soundtrack or a DTS-X soundtrack. Then you could rent that, and if it doesn't, then you know it's the rental-only version of the disc.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good resource.
I think we already answered this, but he knows that Vudu offers several titles in Atmos. Do any other streaming services use Atmos? Well, we said Xbox now has some.
I'm not sure if that even counts as streaming, because that's sort of download.
Yeah.
It's not really streaming.
I can't think of anything else that has Atmos. I know Amazon doesn't have it, so...
No.
Yeah,
I
can't think of anything.
There was some talk that MGO, which is now Fandango Now, was supposed to be getting it, but that service is...
There was like three services that were supposed to get it, and Vudu got it, and nobody else did. So, not as of yet. So, cross your fingers there, buddy.
Your real best place to get Atmos and DTS-X is actually Ultra HD Blu-ray out of everything, and second would be Blu-ray.
But remember, just because he doesn't have dedicated Atmos, you still use the upmixer. So you can still get sound to come out of there. That's fine. So when it comes to HDR, are AV receivers actually ready now, or should we be waiting for HDMI 2.1? I don't think we know for sure. I
know. It really depends on if that Samsung HDR10 Plus format gains any foothold whatsoever. Because I don't know. So HDMI 2.1, the biggest thing that it is going to offer is up to 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth. And there is absolutely no need for that for 4K resolution or HDR or immersive audio. We do not need it. That is all about 8K and 120 frames per second. That's what the extra bandwidth in HDMI 2.1 is all about. HDMI 2.0B, which is the current spec, can do HDR10 and hybrid log gamma, and then Dolby Vision is an optional thing. Mm-hmm. Dolby Vision can work on an HDMI 1.4 connection, hardware-wise. It's all up to the software support inside the devices when it comes to Dolby Vision. So, the current AV receivers, the newest ones that are coming out, particularly from Yamaha has said, our newest ones have HDR10 pass-through, Dolby Vision pass-through, and hybrid log gamma pass-through. and I'm certain that the new ones that are coming out from Denon and Marantz will support those as well. Whether any older models will get an update to support hybrid log gamma, Lord only knows. We know the ones that have been out since 2016 are supposed to be getting a Dolby Vision update, but again, they haven't confirmed that on their North American websites yet. So right now, right this second, a current generation 2017 model year Yamaha is your safest bet as far as the 3 HDR formats that we know will be in use. But if that, and it's funny because I've been reading some stuff about HDR10 Plus, and the people who have been trying to use it to make content, they're like, well, if you took all the things that make Dolby Vision good to use, and those are patented by Dolby, and you had to come up with janky workarounds to do it, that's HDR10 Plus. So even though it's free, the cost of actually doing it might make you go, maybe we'll just pay the license to Dolby.
Well, I mean, we experience this too, to be honest with you, in podcasting, because we're constantly using not the good software. We're using the free software.
That's right.
Because I love to use Pro Tools. I would love to. For a while, I did use Pro Tools. At the very beginning of this podcast, I used Pro Tools because someone gave me a product key for it. Found out, he's like, "Oh yeah, it's pirated key." I'm like, "What? I'm using pirated?" So I got rid of it. But Audacity, which is great, it is free. Yeah. I'm not bad mouthing them. It is so much worse than Pro Tools, and I was using like an old version of Pro Tools, and oh my god. The difference is, it's like, living in a mansion versus living in a double wide. I mean, yes, they're both houses, and yes, they'll keep you dry mostly in the rain, but one is considerably better than the other. That's kind of what you're describing here. So will they do it? I don't know. Okay. The honest answer is we don't know. My gut feeling is you're going to be fine buying something right now. I don't see any need for HDMI 2.1, like literally anytime, but certainly not anytime in the near future.
And the real way to think about this is when you look at everything that does HDR supports HDR10. Everything. I mean, there's the Vizio reference TVs that came out too early, and for some weird reason they don't do HDR10, but that is one model of one brand of TV. Everything else that does HDR10, because that is the mandatory sort of baseline.
Yeah.
And hybrid log gamma can be translated into HDR10. Dolby Vision is being layered on top of HDR10. So if you have HDR10, you can get HDR. Will you get the most fabulous version ever? Possibly not, but you will get HDR if you have HDR10 support, and we certainly have lots of AV receivers that can pass through HDR10. So that's the real way to think about it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Nick's current front speakers are Ascend Acoustics Sierra 2s. He intends to keep them, but upgrade all of his other speakers in his eventual 7.2.4 setup. He was thinking of using Ascend HTM 200 SE speakers for his top fronts and top rears, but going by their published measurements, they appear to roll off in the highs and have a dip in the mid-range once you get about 30 degrees off axis. Dolby says the top speaker should have even dispersion within a 90-degree window. And we're always saying that just point the top speaker straight down. So would that mean that HTM 200 SEs aren't a great choice? Should he use NHT speakers instead, or would Room EQ be able to compensate for the HTM 200's off-axis response just fine? Now, 30 degrees off axis, that's 30 degrees from the center line.
Correct.
Okay? That means they start to roll off if you're looking at both sides at 60 degrees. They have a 60-degree cone that's coming out of them.
Yeah, 60-degree cone, yeah.
And that's 2/3 of what Dolby is asking for, which is a 90-degree window, right? I mean, that's what they're talking about. 45 degrees off axis is what they're talking about. Don't look at the 30 versus the 90 and say 30 is a very small number compared to 90. It's 30 is not that small of a number compared to 45. So let's start with that. Second, how far off axis are you going to be sitting from these speakers? I mean, I don't remember what his room looks like. And he's going to do top fronts and top rears. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but why would I in my mind, why would you not do top middles? Like, to me, top middles seems to be like the jam.
Top front, top rear is sort of the recommended setup if you can do it. Because that's get you the full panning front to back and all that.
Anyways, doesn't matter. But are you sitting more than 30 degrees off axis of these things? On top of that, Atmos speakers really don't have to be all that good.
there's
what it really comes down to.
Yeah, there's also something that's specific to the HDM200 SEs. It's not unique to them, but it's specific to them because they are that nested array design where it's two 4 or 4.5 inch, I forget the exact size, but 4-inch-ish woofers with the tweeters sort of beside them and in the middle of them. So the dispersion of the high frequencies actually is a bit wider to the tweeter side of the speaker. Ascend actually has another measurement right below the one that we showed that shows both sides of the dispersion. And it is a little bit more extended on one side than the other because the two woofers act as a bit of a barrier to the high frequencies going out that side of the speaker.
So just make sure the tweeter's kind of facing
make sure the tweeter is closest to you. Yeah, however you're orienting them on the ceiling, just have the tweeters closest to your seats, and that'll get you a little bit more high-frequency extension in that particular direction, which is actually a benefit because it starts to make sure that you're not getting a whole bunch of reflections off of other surfaces in your room that you don't necessarily want. So you can do that if you absolutely need to. You can aim your Atmos speakers a little bit. The idea is to have all of your seats that you care about within the listening cone of the speaker. So you got 60 degrees to work with, and these things are on your ceiling. You can probably fit all of your seats within that 60-degree cone without too much difficulty. That said, the NHT speakers aren't a bad idea, but he did specifically mention they're in-ceiling speakers that have that weird triple tweeter design thing that I'm not really a huge fan of. I'm not even sure why they bothered with that. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to it, these are Atmos speakers, and I kind of alluded to it by saying it directly, that they don't really have to be that good. I mean, the idea here is that they're not doing full range. They're not even doing partial range. They're doing a modification of the range. They have a specific number of things frequencies are supposed to hit. Dolby won't even tell us exactly what it is, but they're not doing anything above like a certain, do we remember?
That was more to do with the upward firing version where they have the weird HRTF curve and nothing below 120 hertz and all that. So the physical speakers on your ceiling or in your ceiling, I mean, they theoretically can be full range, but most mixers aren't putting full range sounds into the Atmos channels. That's just not really how they're using them for the most part. I mean, really, if you went with something like NHT Supersats, or what are they called? Super Zeros.
Super Zeros,
that would also be fine. If you went with the HTM 200s, that would also be fine. So I really don't have a problem going either way. I'm not sure I would go for those weird triple tweeter in ceilings from NHT. I don't think that's a fantastic
But you can.
design.
There's plenty of in ceiling speakers that you can choose that would be just fine.
Yeah, you go for like the AVRant in ceiling speakers. Those would sound absolutely fine.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.